Welcome, everyone. I'm retired Police Chief Loren. I was a narcotics detective and dual-purpose police canine handler during my career in law enforcement. I'm bringing you real-life police stories from the people who lived them, in their own words. Today, I talk with Police Sergeant Sean Uhlich about some of his captures with his Police K9 Blitz. Sean and Blitz had many captures of violent criminals as a K9 team in Southwest Washington. This is their story. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, hit the bell for notifications of upcoming videos, and share with your friends. Don't forget about my sponsor who makes all of this possible, MinutemenCoffee.com. Let's do what we do. Quiet on the set. It's go time. Welcome to the show, Sean. Thanks for being here.
Hey.
So can you let everybody know a little bit about yourself, your experience, and then we'll get into some good stories.
Okay. Sean Uhlich, I'm a patrol sergeant currently for a agency in Southwest Washington. I've worked in several counties. Previously, I was the police chief for the city of Vader, and that's when the K9 program started. Field training officer, SWAT certified, firearms instructor, that kind of stuff. Got about 20 years on the job, I'd say.
20 years as a police officer.
About, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. We met, this is not our first time meeting, right? We met years ago. Narcotics K9 school was put on by the state of Washington, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Back in, would we graduate? March of 12, I think.
Yeah, it had to have been somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had K9 ISCO at the time. You had Blitz. And could you tell everybody a little bit about Blitz?
Yeah, I got Blitz through grant and generous community donations, businesses and community members. He was imported from the Czech Republic. We got him back in 2009, and we were certified shortly after that. We went up to Pierce County and went through the 400 hours training program there and became a generalist patrol team.
Excellent. Now, in order to be a patrol dog, it takes quite a bit of training, right?
Yeah, just the initial certification is 400 hours. Yeah. So I know that during your governor campaign, I helped you out a little bit. I just remember giving you a hard time, us driving that crappy bread truck, and every day hosing out dog kennels is how I met Mr. Culp here. So he's come a long ways. I don't know about me, but a lot different than when I first met you.
Yeah, for those that don't know, when we were in the narcotics school together, it was put on by the state of Washington. Barb Davenport was the head instructor, and it was held in the prison. Almost every class we had was in the prison in Shelton. We would go together. We would drive in this like an old bread truck, like a van, and we would go to the kennels and we would pick up all the dogs, and they would go in crates that were on shelves on either side of inside of this van, and take all the dogs, our dogs plus other dogs that were there, drive into the prison, and that's where we would spend 8 or 12 hours training. Okay, so when you got Blitz, how old was he?
Probably about 1.5 years when I first got him, but he had already had quite a bit of training. He was pretty awesome.
All right, and then you guys went through, because when we met in the narcotics school, you had already gone through patrol dog school. You guys were certified. Yeah, I remember being in awe how well trained Blitz was. The other drug dogs, usually drug dogs are not very disciplined. Seeing the difference between my dog and the other dogs compared to Blitz was pretty crazy. I mean, you didn't have to put a leash on Blitz.
Nope.
Very, very highly trained to get to be a patrol dog. But so we spent 6 weeks together in the narcotics class, graduated. In fact, I'll throw up a picture of our graduating class. In 20-year career, how many years were you K9?
Almost 6, I think.
So you have got to have stories to tell, right, about a police K9?
I got a few I think I could give you. Okay, so we'll start out with Blitz's first ever deployment. We had a park in the city routinely patrol the park. I found a gentleman kind of in an off area one day. And basically what it is it's surrounded by a river. It's just a big open field basically in the middle, and some areas where people would swim and hang out. So I contact this guy and I do the normal thing. I run him for warrants. And he comes back for a good bookable warrant back in the day when you could take people to jail. And he didn't want to go. So this guy takes off running, and I take off after him, and I try and shoot him with the taser, and I only get him with one probe. And that's when it clicks. I remember it's like, hey, I got a dog in the back. So on my vest, I carried a remote control. So when I push the button, the back door of my car would pop open, and the dog would deploy and go after these guys. And so this guy takes off running, and he's running through this open field. I mean, it's like a canine handler's dream. If you could ever design a chase for your dog, that is it. So I hit the button, Blitz jumps out, and I send him off. Get that guy. And he chases him, and he catches him real quick, and he just jumps up and hits him with his front legs and turns around and looks at me. And I'm like, get that guy. And he runs over there and jumps up and hits him again. And then he comes running back to me. I'm like, what is going on here, So I send him again. He runs up and hits the guy with his front legs, and now he's just running circles around this dude as he's running through the field. The guy runs all the way across the field, jumps in the river, swims the river, and off into the sunset, and I never see him again. And I'm like, what is going on? My dog is broken. I start calling all my buddies, my canine handler friends that I train with, and they all just start laughing. He had developed a little bit of a training scar, which is, every time, I don't know if you see him, but we have those big sleeves on, and that's what the dog was used to biting. Well, he's looking for the sleeve on this guy, and there's no sleeves, so he didn't know where to bite him. So we had to go back and do some additional training, hidden sleeves and clothes over stuff, and we got him past that. But the first time I used him, it was a little stressful. I thought, my dog is broken. Yeah. What do I do?
I think a lot of canine handlers experience that same thing, because I know I did. Canine Karma trained in patrol and narcotics. On the first one that he went after, he ran up. There was a guy hiding in the bushes, laying on his stomach. He wouldn't obey our commands, wouldn't show his hands or anything. So I sent the dog after a track through the woods, found him. And I sent Karma to apprehend him. He ran over there, jumped up on top of him, looked around, and then started running back to me. I sent him again. And then he grabbed the guy by the jacket on his back and started, doing what he was supposed to do.
Yep.
But yeah, it's kind of it's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I'm just like, are you serious right now? But
yeah, something that can be fixed with the training, right? Just hiding the sleeve, because for 10 weeks, they're going after a guy with a sleeve on.
Right.
So that guy got away.
Yep, off into the sunset he went. I just stood over there, watched him swim the river, and I did not like that, but it is.
Well, it's something that happens to a lot of canine handlers, but I know that's not the only track you had, right?
Don Amon here, president and founder of Minuteman Coffee. Want to welcome you to the coffee revolution. We may not be everybody's cup of tea, but we are the coffee for we the people. Come join this coffee revolution, see what all the hype is about, and help us restore the republic.
Oh, I got a few of them. Let's see. So I think the first good apprehension he had, we got called out for. Most of them were domestic violence calls that we go to. Those are good trackable calls. There was the residents. A lot of neighbors had called about, pretty violent assault, male versus female. The guy took off, but he didn't go very far. He just went around a few houses, pulled back, and pulled the skirting off of his mobile home and had crawled up all the way underneath the mobile home. So that was a short track, not very eventful. We found him in there, and he wouldn't obey commands. I sent Blitz in there and grabbed him by the pant leg and gave him a few tugs, and he decided after that he would just crawl out on his own. So that was the first one.
Yeah, explain to everybody, before you release the dog, right, you have to give people in the area and the suspect a warning, right? You can't just let the dog go unless it's, warranted, like a felon right in front of you that maybe has a weapon or something like that.
Right.
So what do you have to do before you release the dog?
So we'll give us some canine announcements. So just, I'm yelling pretty much. If you're within half a block, you're probably going to hear me. I'm yelling, this area is going to be searched by Police K9. If you're in the area, please, you got to surrender, show me your hands, give yourself up, let me know, kind of thing. And I'll do multiple announcements before I even let the dog go. And if it's a longer track, you would stop as you progress to give more announcements, because obviously if the guy's 4 blocks away, he's not going to hear that initial announcement. And the dogs will give you indicators through their body language. They will act differently when they're tracking scent that's on the ground or scent that's directly coming off the suspect, and their body language will change. he'll get a lot more animated. Like Blitz, his tail would come up and he'd get this big circle in his tail and his head would come up and you're like, oh, here we go. We're about to find this guy. And that time you would usually put the dog in the down, say, you know, make another announcement, give them the opportunity to surrender, right? Because they think they're just going to get away. And if you cannot bite them, that's a preferred ending to a dog track, just because, you know, you don't want to hurt them if you don't have to. You know, less liability, that kind of stuff, and give them the opportunity to surrender. And if they don't, you're tracking them for a reason. It's a qualifying crime. You know, they're either violent or dangerous or that kind of stuff. And so that's what the dog is a tool to keep me safe, so I don't have to go in there and grab this.
Yeah, and it's a lot less paperwork too if the dog doesn't bite somebody.
Right. You don't have to take them to the hospital. Less liability.
So on my last show that I did a preview of upcoming things that I was going to talk about, I told everybody, if you ever hear a police officer hollering, you know, Police K9, you know, come out, definitely let them know you're there, right?
Yeah, yep. I mean,
Don't run.
Yeah, it's amazing that I guess they just don't understand, or it's worth the risk not to go to jail, I guess. You know, some of my stories I'll go into, but you're just flat out telling them, dude, I know exactly where you are, come out. And they don't. Right.
They got to learn the hard way.
Evidently.
They probably wouldn't be criminals if they were smart, right?
That's for sure. Yeah, there's a good thing. We'll jump right to the next one. You want to go into what I got for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Evidently, this guy had been bit by every dog in the county except for Blitz. But so I got called out. I get there about 15 minutes later. I get the details, and we end up tracking this guy through the garage, into the backyard, hit the alley. We go down the alley for a block or two, come out on some of the main streets. And I think what happened is he ran into a couple of containment units that were coming into the area. So he had to circle back, and he ended up, unbeknownst to me, hiding in the bushes in front of the house right next door to where we started. You know, end up tracking around, come back in a circle. And a lot of times what happens is they'll get into a car and the track will just end. You know, we'll be tracking along, and the dog will pick his head up and be like, looking around like there's nothing here. So what we do is we'll do what's called casting. Is, you know, he's on the lead and I'm just sending him in circles, trying to figure out if the dog just missed it and trying to pick up the scent. So I have him off lead and he's casting on his own, and I'm standing there talking with my cover officer, and we're looking around, you know, just trying to figure out what's going on. And the dog's not really showing me anything exciting. And the next thing I know, I start hearing this screaming and yelling behind me, and I hear Blitz growling and this guy yelling, and he's in the bushes like 15 feet behind us, and Blitz is in there just chewing him up. So we go in there and get him out. And he ended up being a sex offender that had been bit now by every dog in the county.
Could you explain to everybody a little bit, you know, about when the dog's on a track? Usually they're on a long line, right? So you can have, they'll stay fairly close to you. But a lot of people, you know, they're like, well, why didn't the dog catch him when you first went by? But there's factors involved. There's wind, the scent, whether it's a warm day or a cool day, right? Can you explain a little bit about the scent tracking?
So we it's kind of like fishing, like fly fishing. I don't know how to explain it, but so the dog will be on a, you know, depends, 15 to 30 foot long lead, and that's kind of my indicators. I use that to control the dog and to gauge whether or not he's actually on a scent. Canine handling is interpreting signals that the dog is giving you, watching their behaviors. And like, I'm just the dummy on the end of the rope, pretty much. I just got to let him do what he needs to do. So I will use the leads to determine how hard he's pulling. That'll tell me sometimes when he's just kind of messing around and not really on it. If I give him a little tension on the lead, he'll stop and lift his head up and look around. But when he's on the scent and I give him a little bit of tension, he'll dig down, put his head in, and off he goes. And then at that time, what I'll do is I'll just let the lead out into my hand so he's on the end of it and give him enough time to work. And so if he loses the scent, I'll reel him in. We'll do a little bit of casting. And then when he finds it again, I'll use that tension to gauge whether or not he's on it. And then I'll just let him off. And we can do that back and forth. As far as the scent goes, you know, temperature affects it a little bit. But I think when I explain it to the patrol guys, trying to give them an idea, tell people, like, kind of imagine that you have a colored chalk all over your body. And so every time you take a step, a little bit of that colored chalk puffs off onto the ground. And as you're walking, a little bit of it is blowing off your body. And so just imagine the wind will blow it. And as it blows and settles down, it's going to settle against, you know, like into ditches or against curbs or against houses. You know, it stays better in things like grass and things like that. So if you can just kind of visualize all that chalk kind of falling off your body and setting it on the ground, that's what the dog is looking for, is that scent. Then
Okay.
that's
So yeah, the dog will not necessarily track right in the footsteps of a person, right? If
correct.
like a person's running straight away from you, or had traveled straight away from you where you're at right now, and the wind's blowing from the left to the right, their scent is going to be off a little bit to the right, correct?
Yeah, and there's a lot of times, like if you're on the road and there's a ditch, the dog may have ran, or the suspect may have ran along the road, but if there's a ditch on the downwind side, the dog will be tracking through the ditch because that's where all the scent is. And they'll dip in and out, go in, and
Yeah, if people can imagine, they've seen videos all the time of sled dogs, right? Like in the Iditarod or whatever. When the canine's on a hot scent, and I'm sure Blitz was like this, when he had good scent, he was pulling you, right?
Yeah, he was big, 120 pounds probably?
Yeah, he was a big dog.
He was a big boy. So I would literally take the lead and I would wrap it around my waist and put both hands in front of me and lean back. Because if I didn't, he would pull so hard that I couldn't keep up with. I ran a lot. I tried to stay in good shape, but I can't run like that,
Right.
just to slow him down because he pulled so hard.
Well, yeah, I mean, think of sled dogs. I mean, they run for hours, right?
Yeah.
It's just something that they love to do. And, police canines are no different. They love to track. They love to apprehend people. It's a game to them.
Oh, yeah, they love it.
Do you have any more stories you want to share with us?
This guy we got twice. We had probable cause for a guy for a domestic violence crime. So basically, I'm driving up the road. I turn up, and I can see his house up on the right. It's a single wide trailer, probably 3 trailers up. He sees me, so I kind of give it some gas, and I hop out, tell him, "Hey, you're under arrest. Stop where you're at." And he takes off running along the front of the trailer and goes around the backside. So I hit the button. Blitz and I take off running around the backside. His plan was to run around the back of the house and go through the back door. As I'm coming around the back, he's running up onto the porch and he gets to the back door and it's locked, which is unfortunate for him. So I send the dog and he sees the dog and throws his hands up in the air. I give up. So as Blitz is going up the front steps, I give him the stop command and I recall him and he comes back. He's kind of following commands, but it doesn't justify me sending the dog. Shortly after that, Mom comes out to check on little Johnny to see what's going on, and all of her 3 little, I guess I would call them pick-me dogs, those little Shih Tzus or something, come running out, and they think that they're going to give Blitz the business, and he looks at me, and I look at him and tell him, "No, leave him alone." So these dogs are literally running all around us while I'm giving the suspect verbal commands. One of them runs up his back, and he just sits there. He doesn't care. He doesn't chew this dog up. He's just locked onto the suspect. I finally get this lady to round up her dogs. We take this guy into custody. So that was pretty much the end of that one. But it was just amazing how well trained, the discipline of my dog, just listening to me and staying on track and doing what he was supposed to. And these dogs are literally just in his face and crawling up his back, and he just sat there, just amazing.
And yeah, that's a little bit of an insight into how well patrol dogs have to be trained before they can be certified. And you have to be recertified quite often too. When you send your dog to apprehend someone and they give up, your dog has to be able to be recalled to stop going after that person, right? Even right up to them.
Yeah. We got to the point where, some dogs are a little better at it than others. At some point, I think some of them, if they're in the air, they're probably going to whack you. But like Blitz, for example, he was amazing. His obedience was outstanding. I could send him on somebody. He could be flying through the air. And if I could yell at the right time, I'd give him the poosh command, which was stop, don't bite. He wouldn't bite the guy. He would just stop in midair and turn around and come back.
Yeah, that was always amazing to me, to see police dogs do that and to be recalled, because, I used to have hunting dogs. Mm-hmm. We used to hunt bear, cougar, and bobcat with hounds. And I know when they're on a scent or they see something, they're going. They're not coming back. They're not going to quit. And it's because they have that drive inside of them to catch whatever it is that they're after. And to see a highly trained police dog be almost running full speed, almost right up onto a suspect, ready to get that bite. And then the handler says, gives them the command to come back. They just stop, they turn right around, they come back. It's amazing to see.
It didn't work like that every time during training, but eventually we got there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Training was a train wreck in the beginning, definitely. But it was amazing to see it, progress. I guess that's why patrol dog school is 10 weeks, and then you continually train after that.
Yeah, we have mandatory training every month, minimum hours that we have to do on top of that to stay current. Yeah.
And the state requires that, right? You
Yes.
have to. You cannot pass. You cannot be certified unless your dog can be recalled.
Correct.
So,
yeah, that is part of the testing requirements. So that same guy, I don't know how many months later, but that same guy, same thing, you're under arrest. He runs into the house. We surrounded the house, waited and applied for a search warrant. The search warrant was granted. So we made forcible entry into this house to remove this gentleman. We made a lot of announcements on the outside, beating on it. We used the PA. He knew we were there. He had the opportunity to surrender for a good period of time before we even got the search warrant. So we make entry into this house. And one of the techniques that I'll do with the dog is that lead that we talked about earlier is I will send the dog into a close portion of the house, and I'll use the lead to control how far he goes in and out, and we will clear room by room. When you are in a house, the longer that the suspect is in there, the better it is for us, because basically all that scent is just cooking. That dude's just in there, and all that scent is just seeping out, and it's condensing, and it's just, it's super easy for the dog to find him. We make entry into the house, we clear the first couple of rooms, and I'm making announcements as we go through, and we start working our way down through this single wide, and we get down to the last, into the hallway at the last room, and the door's closed, and Blitz is at the seam of the door, and I can tell he's getting animated. The guy's in there, there's no doubt about it. And I'm giving him all these announcements, calling him by name, trying to talk him out of, I know you're in there, you're not going to get away, just come out. You're not going to get hurt, just come on out. He wouldn't do it, so we went into the room. And the dog starts, he quickly clears it, and I see him just do a 90, just to be shoots right over to the closet. So I call him off, give more announcements, and I'm talking to this guy. I'm in the doorway, and I'm probably 10 feet from this dude. I'm just telling him, hey, come out. I've given you all the announcements. I know you're there. You're gonna get bit. Why go to the hospital and into the jail? Just come out. And he wouldn't do it. So he's buried in this. It's a single wide trailer, so you can imagine what it looks like in there sometimes. And he's buried in 3 feet of clothes, probably, thinking that he's going to get away from the dog. So I send the dog in there, and Blitz just starts digging through all these clothes. And the next minute, you start hearing the yells, and he's got this guy by the leg and jerks him out of this pile of clothes, and we take him into custody. And off to the hospital he goes, and then to jail.
That was the second time.
That was the second time, same guy.
The first time he gave up on the porch. But
Yep.
This time he's like, no, I think I want to see what it feels like to be bit by a police dog.
Yeah, just amazing.
Like I said, criminals aren't the smartest people in the world sometimes, right?
Sometimes.
That's amazing. Let's break that down a little bit. You said that when before you guys made entry, you announced multiple times on the outside, and you don't just call a judge on the phone and say, hey, judge, I got this guy in the house, I want to go in. The judge says, okay, go ahead.
You go through the process of writing a search warrant, calling the judge on a telephone, giving him your probable cause, all the things that, justify you, what you think justifies you arresting this guy and making entry into a home. Because normally you can't do that, right? We've got this thing called the Constitution, right, that protects us. So that's what gives us the authority to go in there. And the whole time we're on the PA system, because we don't want to go through all that process. If we can just take somebody to jail and not do it, we try. And so we're on the PA, we're beating on the door. We know he's in there, just trying to, and he still wouldn't come out.
Yeah, because if you have, it's one thing to give people an announcement and they do come out. It's a whole lot less paperwork, to write up an affidavit, to send it to the judge, to wait for the judge to read it, and then get back to you. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot more paperwork. And so, yeah, the best outcome is the person would come out, surrender themselves to the police, and deal with it afterwards. Some people want to make it a little more difficult. So it's definitely a high adrenaline situation, right?
Yeah, we can't use a dog for everything, right? Obviously, there have to be qualifying crimes within your policy, typically felonies, domestic violent crimes, that kind of stuff. Weapons involved, actively resisting type thing. It's gotten a little bit more restrictive, obviously, with all the new laws. But yeah, we can't turn the dog loose just for everything. It's got to be something good.
You can't send a dog into the front seat of a car on a traffic stop for a speeding ticket, right?
Only once, probably. You wouldn't do it again.
That would be the end of your career.
Yeah, that would be the end of that.
All right, how about another story?
Okay. This one was probably my favorite. So, typically what will happen a lot of times is we will get called out. I'll be off duty, and if there's no dog on in service, they will call handlers at home. Usually it's dark 30, wee hours of the night. So 2 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning, I get a phone call about one of the local agencies had got into a pursuit. Pursuit ended at the end of a road. Suspect and female, it turned out to be his girlfriend, fled from the vehicle. I load Blitz up in the car, and we get dressed as fast as we can and go running down their lights and sirens, and talk to the officer. I get some questions on my way there. Typically, I want to make sure that it's a qualifying crime, that they're going to take this guy to jail when I find him and possibly bite him, all that stuff. But I get on scene, go over the details. Yep, this is a good track. We got a good crime here. And we start the track from the car. So I put him in the front seat. The start process for my dog is if I have a good starting point, I will put him in a down, and you'll see him. He'll put his nose down and he'll smell the ground and kind of look at me like, yeah, I got this. We're ready. I'll give my announcements and off we'll go. So I put him down by the open driver's door of this car, and he's off. We take off, go around the front of the car, and we just dive down into the woods. And this guy loses a shoe immediately. And that's one of the other things that the dogs are trained to do is article searches. So they will find discarded evidence, guns, clothes, drugs, any of that kind of stuff. And what he'll do is he will find it. He'll go into a down, he'll hit it with his nose and let me know that it's there. So we immediately find a shoe, and we come to I guess it's a slough, not very far. They swam across this slough. So I look at the cover guide. He's like, all right, let's go. So off we go. We cross this slough, and it's kind of farm country over there, big open fields. The track was kind of boring and long for a while, but we are running and running and running down this old farm road, and we're running and running and running, and we've got to be getting close to a mile. He stops and lifts his head up like he's lost the track. So we do the typical start to cast. He picks it up again, and we're running along a major river is on our right-hand side a little bit, and he picks it up right away. And what we do is we go down this bank, and we're at the edge of the river, and I find a sweatshirt. It's not actually the river. It's like this backwater off of the main river channel, and it's probably 50 feet long. And the dog is at the edge of this, and he's wanting to go. I mean, he's given me every indication that, yeah, this guy is out here. He's in the water. And I know you talked about hunting. I know that I had my labs when I was duck hunting. They could track those ducks, leave the scent across the water, and they would track them and do it. And that's what we had never trained this. And he's looking at me, and he's wanting to pull, and I'm looking at the cover guy. He's like, you want to go in there? And let's go. So we yard all of our vests up, trying to keep our radios out of the water. And I'm using him as a depth gauge to see if I want to keep going. So I let the line out. All right, get that guy. So he goes out in the water, and he's just kind of touching the bottom every once in a while. I can see him. It's like, okay, I'll do that. I'm not swimming out through this river with all my gear on, but so he's just kind of bounding along, and I can tell that it's okay for me to walk through. So we hike all of our gear up, and we go out across this water, and it ends up, about yay high. And so I've got Blitz on the end of my lead, and pull across the water, and we end up on this small island on the edge of the main river channel. Working the bank, and he takes a 90, and it's the summertime, so the grass is head high. You can't see anything. It's the middle of the night, and he just dives into the grass. So I'm following him on the lead. The next thing you know, you start hearing the yelling, and so I call the dog back, and we push through the grass, and I find this guy. He's shielding his girlfriend. No shoe. They're soaking wet, and they gave up pretty easy. They got a little bit of a nip, but they gave up and found him on an island in the river. That was a pretty good one.
How long was that track?
Probably a mile and a half.
Okay, and you didn't get there when the guy just all of a sudden took off, right? You were there.
No.
You were called out. You were there sometime later.
Yeah, it's typically it depends on how far it is, but I had a system down. I had everything ready to go. So if they called me, it'd take me a minute to shake my head and wake up, and then I just got to throw my jumpsuit on and my vest, grab the dog, and throw his vest on him and his collar, and hop in the car, and we're off. So I was probably within half an hour. I was there 25 minutes, something like that. So,
yeah, and the longer between the time the person took off running to you start the track, the harder it becomes for the dog, right?
Yeah. Not only the scent disperses and is a little harder to find, but typically what happens, the key to most successful dog tracks is containment. One, guys don't screw up the scent when you get there. Have a good starting point for me is the best thing. And then what happens is, like a lot of the agencies that I work for now, they're very good at dogs. and they understand that, like for every 2 minutes, they say they'll get about 3 blocks. So you got to calculate from the time you get the call, and estimate all that stuff so let's say, it's probably 2 minutes or so before the incident happens and 911 gets a call. Then they got to dispatch it. And then we got to get there. And then we got to start putting people in place. So you have to estimate all that. And you look at a map, and that's where you set your that's where you set your containment. So you start placing patrol cars, as much resources as you had with your lights on, your sirens, and basically you're making this guy stay inside a box and go to ground. You want him to hide and try and wait. You don't want their buddies coming to get them. You want to make sure that you set your containment big enough that they don't get through it, and then it's really hard to catch them after that. And once that happens, it allows me to get there and the dog to do his job and find the guy. I mean, we did a lot of cool stuff too. I mean, we got to be grand marshal of a parade, but it's not all about biting people. We got to go. I think one of my favorite things to do is like go to schools.
Yeah,
kids absolutely love those dogs. We could just interact with the public, and those were the fun things too. It's not just about biting bad guys, but
yeah, canines are a great ambassador for departments. I know with both my dogs, especially Isco, my first dog, he loved being around the kids. My second dog didn't like kids so much, but they got to see him work. I did demonstrations and stuff like that, same as you did, I'm sure.
Yep.
The public definitely loves police dog. All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Out there.
Okay, thank you.